How's it going, Ultra Buddies? Omega deck profile time. So this deck looks pretty different, but let's say we're going to go over the deck list. We'll talk about cards that I misjudged completely, um, basically why the deck looks different, and then we'll talk about why we play some of these new cards, so why the ratios are the way they are. We'll talk about mulligans, and then we'll talk about some combo plays. That's kind of the usual spiel for me. So yeah, this deck looks pretty different than what you all saw in the break-in build. That's because I completely misjudged a few cards, and I had to reassess the ratios to kind of make sure they fit in. So things that didn't change is the 4 Omega from the main set, the 4 Omega from the starter deck, 4 Reckiness, 4 Reckiness, 4 Trigon, 4 Trigon. So those are like, and then kind of the level ones. The good stuff is kind of changed the same. So the cards that we're so this card I took out of the deck. So what this one does is if you're a triple, you can give one Kaiju, Medio Kaiju plus 3000 BP. It's actually a really strong effect, but I really don't like how it's 16,000 power. So now I will say I lost to this in an Omega Mirror in the Galaxy Cup because I had an awkward hand where I wasn't able to defend a double BP up on one lane, and it was a Kaiju lane, and this effectively made it a double BP up, and it was like my 1-2 Omega versus the 3, so obviously I'm going to lose that there. But most of the times against Omegas, this is always going to tie, or to lose against your Omega triples and tie against the BP boosted Kaiju. So I kind of don't love like a one-shot card like this. I know that theoretically the Alien Scholar and I can give BP like plus 2000s to fix this lane, but I don't want to be forced to fix the lane, if that makes sense. So anyway, that I think is like the one major card that I'm not playing anymore. So let's talk about the changes. The big change is actually the most important change is here comes an alien. If you have an Omega, round 2, you can reveal the top 5 cards of your deck and put 1 Kaiju from among them into your hand and send the rest to the discard area. So what I learned from playing the deck more was that having these Kaijus, having 5/6 to play, like a double to play, having Reckiness, it makes a big difference. So basically being able to grab your Kaiju combos, and specifically being able to grab Reckiness, basically makes the deck go. It feels a lot like playing like a Hikari deck where you have triple rare Hikari, Mebius. It feels a lot like playing a Mebius deck where this card essentially acts as a triple rare Mebius, letting you BP up and BP down, being really flexible with your type. So this card lets you grab it. Either you grab it, or you put it in discard. So Omega can put it on top of the deck, and you get something else. It's actually so good. I tried a build where it played 4 Here Comes an Alien and 3 Scholars, but I do think the Scholar is more important in the end game than you could. But like this is still like you want to play this on turn 2. Sometimes you want to play it on turn 3. But this is the card that you kind of need to end games, so I'd rather have 4 of this. The second card that I'm playing now that I wasn't playing before, is the BP04 Reckiness, the level 6. So this character versus a power type, it gets BP type extra, which you have to be careful. You kind of got to know your matchups there. But it is a massive 16,000 on the BP grade up, so that means you can Reckiness it up to 16. Or you can just play it as a double here for 16. And it's also more targets to get for your Medio Kaiju. It gives you more targets than you had before for Alien Scholar and I, so you're more likely to randomly discard Medio Kaiju, which helps a lot. But one of the, it's going to be kind of weird, but one of the biggest things for this card was actually for the mirror match. That's actually why this deck is set up a little bit the way it is, because I played the mirror match a couple of times and I hated it. So I think this card is pretty good against a mirror match because you're relying a lot on trying to win this third lane to get the Alien Scholar and I up. That makes a huge difference to break ties and things like that. So for instance, if your opponent isn't playing this one, and because they're playing so many Kaiju, it's pretty easy to match this not against. I know there's power types in here, but it's pretty easy to match this not against the power type because you can kind of guess when they're going to use a Kaiju. So for example, if your opponent goes for a 16,000 play with this Reckiness and you go for a 16,000 play with this one, you're going to tie, which means your opponent might be able to keep the lead, If you have the lead, you'll keep the lead. If your opponent has a lead, they'll keep the lead. But the biggest important thing here is the next turn they're going to go down to 13, and you're going to be at 16. And that's like that's actually a very big and important difference to make is being able to break those like kind of awkward ties, or like if you think they're going to do Reckiness or Trigon is a pretty solid lane 2 play, so you can also do that in lane 2 and kind of like lock that away, because now not just are you winning that lane, but if they do a BP grade up, you're just tying. They can't even win that. So that's actually really important. So yeah, so I really underestimated Here Comes an Alien, so we had to find space for that. And I think this is really good for the mirror match. And the more I play that Mega, the more I think it's insane, and you kind of need to be ready for the mirror match. And it's also very like RNG heavy, as you're getting random discards from the scene, you're getting random discards from Omega. It feels kind of awkward, and so I'd love to try to find ways to make it feel less cheesy, and this is one of those ways. So to make room for all these, we dropped down to 6 level 1s, pretty low on there. We have 10 level 2s and 8 level 3s. So this is the mark. You have to have the 8 level 3s. You want to have more level 2s than you do level 3s. And then with level 1s, we can get away with going down to 6, because I only really want to play level 1s on the first turn. And after that, I'm totally fine having doubles, because Reckiness gives you so many BP grade ups, and because this one gives you power. So you can get away with like never making more than 1 triple pretty easily. So that's why 6 is totally fine. There are definitely games where you just play this like a 1-2 on the first lane, and then get your Omega up, and then you start milling cards to try to get Trigorons to help you fix a bad hand. So yeah, there are plays. I've also learned to be a little bit less greedy about playing Omega. Like if Reckiness isn't gonna come up, you can try to like get Triggeron if you're really like hurting. But for the most part, you kind of just chill. If you go too hard, especially in an Omega mirror, like you'll deck out. So that's pretty much it with the deck for Mulligan. That's the deck. That's why we added these cards, made some room for things, and everything's set up like that. The mirror match, we talked about that. Why these cards are in. This one's in for the mirror match. How to play about the mirror match. So I think which next was said we'll talk a little bit about Mulligans. For Mulligans, this is probably your most important card. It doesn't super matter if you have anything else. Like, you have to be able to play it, of course. If you have like an Omega and a level 1 and a bunch of other random stuff, it's not going to help. But if you have a level 3 Omega and a level 2, hopefully a Scene Switcher, I think you're chilling. You'll be pretty good. Obviously, like having some form of draw is nice, whether it's a level 1 Omega or the Trigon. But the main thing is if you can get one of these, even as a level 2, you're like totally happy there. If you don't get any, if obviously you don't get any draws, you send it back. If you get a Omega and a draw, you could try to go for it. I would feel like much more comfortable if you get these two together. That's like more okay than getting these two together. That's because this one has to have an Omega on the field, so you might be forced into a spot where like you have to play kind of awkwardly. But if you can do like a Scene Search into Trigon and then put this one on lane 1, that's like totally fine to do. So basically, you really want this one. If you can't get it, try to keep a few searchers. This scene will help you a lot if you're hurt, but the Reckiness can come in for later. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some strategies and combo plays. Then I think could be pretty important. In general, the game I'll show you the game plan in general for the deck, and then I think we can go from there and move these away a little quick. The game plan in general, I think, is to build a triple Omega and then just start slamming doubles. You start slamming doubles. Your favorite double to play in the second slot is Trigon, because it draws you cards. And then you can start going, like, I think it gets a little weird now. So you can play 16,000 Reckiness, or you can go for the triple rare Reckiness. That's always good. You can also start just playing doubles like your Omega doubles. So boom, you're basically just trying to hit doubles after this, because it lets you kind of go crazy. So at this point, the way the deck kind of matches up against a lot of the other decks is if you get a Trigoron here or say Reckiness here, you're probably going to win the lead here. So you'll be able to get your search, which makes it really easy to keep up the double kaijus, keep going. It'd be valuable to consider playing multiple of these instead of going into this one, just to keep up your advantage and keep up your searching. That's why I'm considering playing 4 of this scene and then 3 of this one. Maybe I'll actually take this one out and just play 8 scenes because it seems totally fine. It's a deck that likes to keep lead because of how it plays with doubles and BP grade ups. And then one of the, I would say probably the most important combo to keep it. This is like the trickiest and most interesting card in the deck. So we'll talk about it last. But like for example, you can go for some. Before we talk about that one, some of the setups you can do are. We might have to talk about that one first actually. But you can go for an Omega here, and then if you mill Reckiness, then it's an 18,000. You're likely to get the lane 3, so you can play the scene, right? One thing you can do is if you're not like desperately fighting for turn 2, you can play this level 5 Reckiness, which opens up a lot of options for you. So one of those options is being able to play Reckiness on the next turn and line it up with your 18,000. You don't have to play a mill there, or line it up with its Trigoron, so that like, I mean this doesn't super make sense because you could just search first, but you can also line it up like this, so you have 13 and then you can make this one the 16. It kind of like leaves you your options open a little bit more. So that is pretty nice. Like having the one Reckiness here essentially lets you delay this Reckiness to line it up with some of these things, which can be really important in like a mirror match where your opponent might be wanting to play a Reckiness here that takes the lead, but you have to be careful about that because if you play a 2-3 Omega here, later in the game, this is going to be a 13, that's going to be a 12, and you're going to be hurting every turn trying to get that lane fixed. That's why having 16 is actually so important. So I'm getting a little bit too into the weeds. So let's talk about the most important card in the deck, surprisingly, is this Omega Reckiness armor. So what this card does is it lets you take any Medio Kaiju from your discard and put it on top of your deck. So that lets you do a few things. It either lets you put it on top of the deck, wait till next turn, and draw it in hand, or it lets you put it on deck and mill with Omega and get a plus boost, or it lets you put things on top of deck and mill with the scene to give plus 2,000. So this card can set up a lot of things. You can also, like, you have to make sure you sequence it right, where like if you have a scene search and you play this one, then you probably want to search for the scene and then put your guy on top. So this is the card that opens up a lot of plays and a lot of interesting plays for the deck because it lets you grab things back. It also gives itself plus 1,000, so it'll be 13 and then 18. So what I was saying, if you want to try to really fight for that turn 3 lead, you can have a setup like this. I don't know what you played into lane 2, it doesn't really matter. If you have Reckiness in your discard, then you can go for this setup. So you wouldn't have that scene out. You're going to play this one here, boom, put like that. Then you're going to mill and have an 18. Or you can do it like this, basically the same thing. You put that Omega, put the Reckiness on top, mill it. For this effect, give the plus BP there. So those are some of the things you need to think about. Think about how you want to take lead, when you want to take lead, and then kind of just spam scenes and pray a little bit that the RNG is on your side, because sometimes you're going to need to hit a Reckiness off of the Omega blindly. You've not done anything to set it up. Sometimes you're going to need to hit 1 or 2 Medio Kaiju off the Alien Scholar and you're going to not be able to set it up. with the Reckiness armor. So this basically removes the RNG from your setups. But sometimes you don't have it, and you just gotta run it. So you need to learn a little bit your probabilities and things like that. And I think that's like a little rambly. I'm very tempted to try 4 scenes, so I might just go ahead and do that. But I'm pretty happy with how this is. So definitely give it a shot, and let me know what you think about the 2 new additions. Here Comes an Alien and the level 6 Reckiness from BP04. I think these cards are super important. I think one last comment I can make about the deck that I kind of skipped over a little bit was these 12,000 level 2s, and then this one from the starter deck. So the reason that we have this one that mills 4 is because when you have your bad hands, you're really wanting to discard cards to see what you get in the discard so that you can fix them with Reckiness armor. So that really helps you kind of get out of sticky situations by milling and then pulling something back. It's almost like a 2-card version of a 2-card very slow version of the Mebius level 2. It only works for Medio Kaiju, but that's good enough. And then for this one, if you want to play a 1-2 in lane 2 to try to grab lead, 12,000 is very nice. The worst case situation where you play this by itself, you could BP up to 12, is pretty nice. But there's also a lot of situations where you don't draw a lot of level 3s. So you might do a setup like this, where you play a 12 here, and then do one of these, and then that kind of forces your opponent to commit to a level 3 in this lane if they don't also have a 12, because you'll just always be winning it. And then like the kind of cheeser thing is if you have this one out and you get 3 Medio Kaijus, it could go up to a 18,000, but that's like less important. There's some argument here for playing this one here. That's a 10,000, but it can go up to 14. So if you end up with this kind of like empty lane, you can boost it up to a 14 with the Reckiness. It'd be great up. So yeah, there's that. Some things to watch out for playing this deck. The big weaknesses are going to be Zeton, the promo Zeton, which will totally ruin your day. What it does is if you only have 1 Ultra Hero type card on the field, it becomes a 20,000, and because you only play Omegas, you're very susceptible to that, so that's going to ruin your day. The other things that can be kind of awkward is Belial in general. Like if they play that one, it's a bad time, but they can also just straight up change the type of your Kaiju to change them away from Medio to basic or something, and you can't BP boost them with Reckiness. You know, Gunkun and I haven't tested that like specific interaction or matchup yet, but yeah, it's it sounds like it would be really annoying. So just some things to keep in mind. Some counters is like the Belial deck, and without the scene, it has trouble getting over like really beefy tanky numbers like 18,000s. So if your opponent can set up a lot of 18,000s or set up just 17,000s against your Kaiju, it's going to be really tricky for you to get over them without the scene. So make sure that you get to keep your scene in those situations. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This deck is an absolute powerhouse. Take it for a spin, see what you can do, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.